What's up, YouTube? Welcome back for another video. I've got a Mustang. We're gonna do the tint. We're gonna do the windshield. We're also gonna do obviously the side doors and the back window. So I'm gonna try to get a little more detail on that and just kind of give you a little more of the ins and outs while I'm going through the process, just to help provide some content. So we're gonna dive into it. First thing I'm gonna do is I've got the back window prepped, and I've also got the windshield prepped. And the way I do that is using like Bounty dryer sheets. So wipe it, wash it, wipe it down, use the squeegee to clear down the outside of the glass. Then use a couple of Bounty dryer sheets, get them wet, swirl them around. You're gonna see kind of the film or the streaks on the glass, and that's just kind of like that fabric softener, or it's basically that content that's soaked into the Bounty sheets. That's what kind of gives it that softening. That just when it dries, it actually dries and provides a nice slick surface for the glass. That's really critical when you're doing the shrink, because you want the tint to be able to move freely on the glass as you're applying the heat, as that's kind of shaping, shrinking, and flowing out to replicate the contour of the glass that you're heating it to. So it's wet now. You don't want it to be wet. You want to wait for it to completely dry. Once it's completely dry, then we can place the tint on there. Then we can start the heat and shrink process, and you'll kind of watch as I go through that. Very traditional. You'll see that in any other video as well. Just doing the H pattern, starting with a wet streak halfway across, tying down each ends, making sure that all of the slack is facing vertically, as that's the direction that the tint is going to work to shrink, which is the way it rolls, comes off the roll. Tint will shrink very little one direction, but has significant shrink with the other direction. So you have to be careful of the orientation of that. But anyway, let's get to it, and we're gonna start with the back window. So next night, it's already kind of late, but I want to get out here, at least get something done. I don't want to keep the car in the garage. He was nice enough to leave it with me for a few days just because it is during the week. Typically, I like to do this stuff on the weekends, but I broke this up into a few days. He wasn't in a hurry. He doesn't drive this primarily, so he was fine just to drop it off, and I kind of squeezing it in just amongst the other stuff going on during the week. So tonight, what I want to do is just continue on in the project, and I think we'll tackle the door and the quarter glass. So we'll just run through the kind of just quick showing what that looks like, just touch base on that just to get some progress on the car and share some content on the project. So anytime there's a coupe like this, two-door vehicle, the glass usually has quite a bit of contour. Typically what that means is we're going to want to do a heat and do a shrink just to make sure that bottom edge, because there is a lot of movement here. We're going to struggle getting that down into the gasket if we don't prepare accordingly. So we're going to get this wet. We also need to make sure this vehicle tends to have the feature of the auto setting glass. When we open that up, it's going to drop a little bit. So when we're prepping the tint for the shape of the glass, we have to account for that, because if we basically utilize it based on where the location of this molding is to the glass now, when we close the door and that lifts up, there's a chance you're going to see that exposed bottom edge because you didn't prepare for that extra movement. So a quick trick is you could take just a small screwdriver, take it in the door latch or jamb, like the latch on the side of the door where it would typically go onto the striker of the body. And if you go ahead and press that in with the screwdriver, it's going to replicate to the vehicle to think that you just closed the door, because it just utilized the striker to trigger that latch. And then it's going to cause that glass to go ahead. Oh, there we go. So you're just going to make sure you push it in far enough. Once you get that clicked all the way into position, it's going to raise that up. Now it thinks that the door is shut. Obviously it's not, but we tricked that latch. So the glass is now in its final resting. Now we have an adequate measurement or visibility on where we want that tint to be, ensuring that we go slightly below that gasket now in its current position to get below the molding here on the inside once we install it. Really just to make sure that we've got good adequate coverage below that gasket. As the window goes up and down, there's not going to be interference or a risk of that getting pulled up. Okay. So on my cut board, I've already doubled up 2 layers of tint. You can kind of see there that there's 2 different layers that are back to back. I squeegee them together so that way they kind of lock themselves into position. The key to that is to make sure that you actually reverse the layers. So they are opposite of each other. So the clear release liner is facing me on this side. It's opposite, and the release liner is facing the glass on the bottom piece. Essentially what that creates is the release liner facing out on this back one would be the same as if it was sitting on the driver's door right now. So when we do our measurement and cut, essentially what we're doing is we're compensating for both doors at the same time. Okay, make sure that we're in position, and then we want to kind of lock this in a little bit. And the way to help mitigate some of this slack and tension that we're seeing is to kind of trim some excess, but we can start by locking some of this in place. So now that we've got that locked in a little bit, let's go ahead and just trim some of this excess off. That makes it a little bit easier to work with. And we're going to come all the way along, staying fairly close to the glass, slightly above, to prep for our final cut. But now we've got this extra piece right here, which is what I was referring to earlier, which is going to work great on the quarter glass here. There we go. So we've pretty well, not perfect, but we've got a pretty good amount of the slack worked away around so it's at the bottom. That makes it a lot easier to work with at the top. We can go ahead and run our knife across the top now to make our cut. Start up here on the front corner. Maintain a consistent angle as you're cutting. Slow down at the corner, keep your angle. You can cut that right off. We'll come up now from the bottom. So realign down this side. Push the knife through. Guide ourselves up, slowing down at the corner, not to slip through. Keep it in that shape, and now we've got a nice round at the corner. And then always pull away. When you're snapping your excess, pull away. Pulling the wrong direction could cause that to rip right up into your work zone. Okay, so from here I want to take this, I want to separate them, get one to the other side, and then lay that on there. But first we're going to put it on the cut board here and trace that bottom, get that contour, leaving a little bit of extra there that we'll tuck underneath the gasket and this front edge, and then we'll get them on the doors, go through the heat process to try to pre-shrink that to make it easier to work with before we install. All right, so similar basically to the H pattern like you would see us doing when we did the back window. Now, this kind of picture this as our center point. We want to lock that in. We want to be able to get that slack kind of trapped into a manageable area. Came down on this side to keep that stuff from working back its way back up. Same thing in the front, kind of just basically getting that slack tucked around there, getting those sides locked down. So now we basically got that slack kind of trapped here into the center section. This is where we'll add our heat and we'll work that down, and we'll just kind of really mold that now to the contour and get rid of all this extra slack that's built up by the shape of the glass. Gonna wrap up for tonight. Tomorrow we're gonna go ahead and get the windshield and the back glass on there. That'll pretty much wrap up the Mustang. This has been a little bit of a longer video, breaking it up into a couple of days, but I've also been trying to provide a little more context of kind of what I'm doing, describe some of the details, and hopefully that's been giving you some insight if you've been either looking to do something like this on your own vehicle, or you're just curious, how the heck does tint get installed? So that'll wrap up for tonight. We'll touch base tomorrow. All right, and that wraps it up. So we've got everything installed, ready to pull it out of the garage, give it a final wipe down. Owner will be on his way shortly to pick it up. He's was nice enough to let me keep it, you know, again for a few days, just this during the week, just to squeeze it in, just because I'll be doing some traveling and stuff on the weekend when I typically would take projects like this. But there we go. So that is kind of a little more detail this time in this video. Tried to, you know, provide some little extra content, just kind of maybe some reason why you're seeing what you're seeing, and just kind of get a little more incentive to watch, other than just kind of seeing me at an accelerated pace rapidly work my way through a project. So hopefully that kind of gave you a little more insight. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you in the next project.